This is Talen. She is a 2-year-old refugee from Syria. Her family decided to make the journey after the situation in Syria deteriorated to a point where they could not live anymore. If it wasn't the constant artillery, gunfire, and bombs that would kill them, it was the sanctions. It was the lack of life. It was the constant fear they had to live under. It was the lack of future for their children. So after a long and hard think, their family decided to make the journey. They got smuggled in the back of a truck to Turkey. From Turkey, they took that plastic boat that you keep seeing on the news every day across the ocean to Greece. From Greece, they trekked through 3 countries, Macedonia, Serbia, and Hungary. And from Hungary, they came to Austria. But before coming to Austria, they were jailed in Hungary for 2 weeks. Their parents with their 2 kids, jailed in Hungary for 2 weeks. When they arrived in Austria, Talen, even though she had seen horrors that were unimaginable to us, she still had the joy in her eyes of a child. She still had the energy and the happiness of a little kid. As you can see, when we gave her the chocolate, this was shown very well. The same, unfortunately, could not be said about her brother, her mother, and her father, who looked as if they had seen horrors that we could not dare to imagine ever in our lives, and that would never leave them. This is Bashar. He's a 13-year-old refugee also from Syria. His family fled ahead of them 10 months ago to Sweden. And after the situation in Syria deteriorated to a point where they could not dare to live there anymore, the mother decided to make the journey with her 2 kids, Bashar and his little brother, to Europe. They made the same journey that Talen made, smuggled in the back of a truck, a plastic boat from Greece, and trekking across 3 countries to find a safe haven. Bashar kept on talking about how he would love to go to school and that education was his one and only dream. But that was his second priority after taking care of his family. Because after his father left, he was the man of the house now, and everyone was under his responsibility. This is Ali, a 4-year-old refugee from Iraq. His family have gone through hell and back. They come from the south of Iraq, Najaf to be exact, and have been threatened constantly by the militia that hold a significant amount of power in that region. His family works for the police force, his dad to be exact. And at first they did not take these constant threats seriously. They thought everyone's getting threatened these days, so why should we be any different? Why should we make an effort to work against these threats? But all that changed after they went to Baghdad for a weekend, the capital of Iraq. Once they were in Baghdad, they received a phone call from a neighbor telling them not to come home because there were militia cars waiting outside their house wanting to kill the father. Upon hearing this, they immediately booked a flight to Turkey. And when they got to Turkey, they disposed of all their documents, their passports, and made the same journey to Europe. They told me how they were constantly threatened by Hungarian forces, how they were threatened with batons and other weapons, racially discriminated against, and hovered over by helicopters while they tried to make their way through the Hungarian jungles. Ali turned to me and said something that will never leave me. He said, "But they could not touch us because we are Iraqi. We are used to be treated like this, and we have learned to outsmart these donkeys." Upon hearing this, shivers went down my spine. Did this really just come out of the mind of a 4-year-old? Did this really just leave a 4-year-old's mouth, a child? Did he just accept racial discrimination and a superiority complex that he believed came with the label of being an Iraqi? Is this what all the Iraqi children thought? Is this the mindset that plagued them all? Would he ever retire it? This is Hamudi and N. They are the children I came to love and adore. It was a day when we received about 500 refugees at the station I was working at. Throughout all the chaos, I made eye contact with his mother and his father. And I felt like drawn to them in a way that I cannot describe. And I went to cater to them immediately. I brought them food, water, clothing, and a pushchair for Noor. And we took them to the medical center because Noor wasn't feeling so well after the journey. So after translating, I felt I felt the gratefulness radiating off of the family, especially off of Hamudi and Noor, who were just so glad to find someone willing to play with them. That was made apparent after they dragged me to the playpens. I spent 2 days with this family, and after helping them, translating for them, giving them legal advice, and helping them decide where the best place to claim asylum would be, they spent some of the only money they had left to buy me a thank you drink. And I still keep in contact with this family. I actually received a text message from the father, Ahmed, a few days ago, telling me that they have finished the asylum process in Belgium, and they are now enrolled in language courses and trying to integrate into society, while Hamudi has started school. These lives, these stories, and these experiences are only 4 out of the thousands that make their journey to Europe each day. There are only 4 out of the 1,000 that get off that plastic boat only to face exhaustion, discrimination, illness, and hatred, and all these negative emotions, just sheer racism. There are only 4 out of the thousands that get labeled as irrelevant because they are too far away from home. But they're not too far away from home anymore. They're actually right outside our doorstep. And we can choose to integrate them and let them into our homes, or we can choose to leave them outside and let them barge in eventually. In Vienna this summer, we chose the first option. I worked at Train of Hope, which is a privately founded organization that was established in August of this year in light of recent events that took place in Austria. These recent events include a truck that was found on the highway near Vienna full of 71 murdered refugees. After news got out about this event, 20,000 Austrians took to the streets to march in solidarity with refugees. And after this, Austrians could no longer sit and do nothing about the problem. They could no longer be idle in the face of injustice and oppression. They decided to go to Hauptbahnhof, one of Vienna's main train stations, and assist the newly established Caritas stand that was there to welcome the refugees. Me and my cousin heard about this, and coming from a family full of refugees, we decided we wanted to help. We went to the nearest supermarket and filled the trolley with a bunch of hygiene products, deodorants, toothpastes, toothbrushes, anything we could think of. And after getting weird looks from the cashier, we took that trolley and went to Hauptbahnhof to go and give our donations and offer our helping hand. Because we spoke the language, we would be an asset to them. But as we approached Caritas, they turned us away because there was already such a large influx of volunteers at the station. But me and my cousin did not give up there. We wanted to help, and we were going to find any way of doing so. So we went to the other train station in Vienna, Wien Hauptbahnhof, which became our home for the next couple of weeks. When we got to Wien Hauptbahnhof, we saw a table, a few snacks on the table, maybe some bananas, a few water bottles, clothes flung over the table, and 7 to 8 volunteers, none of whom were translators. So we went and we approached them. We introduced ourselves, and upon introducing ourselves, they were just very friendly people, very happy people. They all spoke fluent English, very welcoming, and upon hearing that we spoke Arabic, their faces lit up in a way, their faces lit up in a way that I can't describe to you. They wrote our language on a piece of paper and stuck it to our chests, and a few minutes later, the first refugees approached us, and that was only the beginning. Within the week, at the end of the week, Hauptbahnhof had given us the entire back of the station, the entire back, which we filled with a medical center, a law facility, a legal facility, a food court, where different restaurants each day would donate food that they had left over to refugees, a clothing bazaar full of clothes for men, women, kids of all ages, and with pushchairs and anything you can think of, we had that in the clothing bazaar. And we had a playpen for the children, bath facilities, everything you could think of, and an information center which we provided free Wi-Fi, free SIM cards, and free tickets to Germany. So at the end of all of this, we received about 1,000 refugees each week, and that was only within the first week of our establishment. With each refugee that came to the station, a number was humanized. They were no longer just a statistic of those who made it to Europe that day. They were no longer just a number for us. They were fellow human beings. They recounted to us their memories and their experiences and their lives. We realized that they are exactly the same as us. They have the same pain leaving their homes as we would if we had to leave ours. As we watched them tell us their stories, we watched like the twinkle in their eyes when they told us about their memories from before the war, their homelands, their friends, their families, their schools, the memories they had. But we also bore witness to the excruciating pain in their faces when they told us about the horrors they have seen during the war. Whether this was being targeted by ISIS or being targeted by state violence, state terrorism, militia groups, whether it was watching their friend be killed, their friend or their family even, be killed in front of them by getting blown up or getting shot at or stabbed, anything you can think of, the worst thing you can think of, they've been through it. And as we listened to them tell their stories, we started to understand the refugee crisis more and more. We started to see that these people were opening up to us in a way that they just wanted people to know their pain. They wanted us to know that they're not coming to Europe to steal our jobs or take over our culture or whatever the people are saying these days. They are coming because they fear for their home lives. And they don't want to be a burden to us. And some people even refuse to take clothes from us because they did not want to be a burden. Even though this establishment was established for them to take clothes from us, they would refuse. So we started realizing this, and we started realizing that there was more in common than we thought. There was no longer an us versus them mentality plaguing the Austrian society. We were all human beings for them. And this was amazing to witness. Basically, after news of this spread throughout Austria, more and more volunteers started to come. Families started to identify with other families that had children the same age as them. Teenagers started to identify with teenagers, students with students. At one point, we even had refugees from Syria and Iraq trying to communicate with refugees from Austria who both studied medicine. So they tried to communicate about what they've learned and their exams and their assessments with the language barrier, because it is possible. After hearing this, after the news spread about the things that connected us rather than the things that separated us, we had volunteers offering their own homes to give showers to these refugees, to let them sleep in their own homes. And this may not seem significant to us standing here or sitting here, but it is, if you think about it. Imagine letting someone you have no cultural connection with. You don't even speak their language. They come from a different background, different belief system. Imagine letting them into your own home, no questions asked, just inviting them in and hoping that they have good intentions. And that's what we were seeing in Austria. Humanity was being revived. Now, the point of this talk was not to brag about Austrian society. It was to encourage you guys, to let you know that if you have a passion to help people, you can do it, even in the smallest things. And we might not get the large influx of refugees here as we do get in Austria, but there are still little things you can do. You can teach them English, you can donate clothing. There's a number of things. You can volunteer at detention centers, go to protests, go to marches. Every little helps. And you might not think that that's true, but after talking with one family and knowing how we helped their child get an education, we helped the father be able to take care of his family, we helped the mother stop worrying every time the child leaves her sight. After hearing all this from the refugees themselves, rather than the politicians who manipulate things to fit their own narrative, you get to see how much your help goes, like what a great distance something as small as talking to them is. So I encourage you guys, go out, help people. Don't get discouraged. Do not get discouraged, because these people depend on our help. Say it loud and say it clear. Refugees are welcome here. Thank you.